Their ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry. May I introduce myself? I'm Watson Pritchard. In just a minute, I'll show you the only really haunted house in the world.
Start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Well, of course there's a search party out there. I tell you, rescuers are looking all over for me.
Make a good headline. Playboy kills wife with champagne cork.
Godzilla is there, and Rodan, and Nina.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to Attack of the 74 podcast. I am your host, the dyspeptic Calvin McCarthy. The subject of today's podcast is Spunks Not Dead, a feature horror anthology that was written, directed, and produced by a bunch of schmucks from Portland, Oregon. I just so happen to be one of those schmucks, and I have the rest of those schmucks here to talk about our film. Welcome, schmucks.
Thank you.
Hey.
Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we'll just jump right into it. I think that we should go in order here of each segment within Spunks Not Dead. Chris, because you did the wraparound story, why don't you go ahead and just give a brief synopsis of the film, introduce yourselves, and we'll go in some sort of order, some sort of organized chaos here.
Okay. So my name is Christopher Jaiwardena. I was the writer and director of High Score, the final segment of the project, but also the co-writer and director of the wraparound segment called Actual Factual Truths. And basically the gist of the wraparound was to create a sort of fictionalized version of like one of these conspiracy theorist vloggers like Alex Jones or Richard Breaker, or I guess to some lesser extent Joe Rogan, but like very much in that like sort of vein that is telling us about this drug called spunk that is tearing apart the cities of America and destroying our youth and absolutely laying waste to the American values of this country. And so that's what then becomes all the segments into it. So then, from there it goes into the first segment, which was done by Jeremy Garner, who is our esteemed friend and fellow weirdo. And he did a great segment called The Babysitter. He's not with us for this particular recording, but we pour one out for him in his honors as he works the grind of being the wage slave. And and I think next was Zach. And go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Hey, I'm Zach, and I made the Devil's Spunk, the dumbest segment of the movie by far.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's also my favorite. So.
Oh yeah.
Nice. I feel like I nailed my job as being the dumbest one. Slam dunk.
Should I go next? Okay. I'm Brian Heltner. I'm the writer-director of Spunk of the Reaper, which is maybe the most self-serious of the segments. So, just when everybody's having a good time, we kind of, make things really super, super serial. I don't know. I made that one.
Is mine next? I forget the order of this.
It
one.
is.
Go.
My name is Calvin McCarthy. I'm the director of the segment Spunky Shines, which is about dating on drugs gone wrong, I guess. I did not write it. But that's a short that's got a long history. So I was the director, editor, cinematographer on Spunky Shines.
All right. And I'm Stephen Jackley. I wrote and directed Zombie, basically just a separate strand of the drug that comes in green because zombie spunk would probably be green.
You've watched Repenetrator, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, and it's about a slumber party that goes wrong when somebody brings that drug.
I guess I forgot to mention that I play a small part in Spunk of the Reaper, and I was the cinematographer on Zombie Spunk. So I also worked on the two that bookend my short. I think that's the first time I've realized that there's like this weird burst of
Calvin.
random Calvin involvement.
Yeah.
That's why that stretch of the movie is just unbearable.
Oh, it's the best.
What? Wait.
That's pretty good stuff, man.
Ouch, man. Ouch.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
Because of me. Because of me. It's that was a
okay.
joke.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
It was a self joke.
In your defense, at least on zombie cinematography, I was your gaffer for the majority of that shoot, and the allergies that I was under on that set. I mean, I was like basically just like in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet, just going with tissues.
Well, on the defense of that defense, we had 2 days scheduled that got bumfucked by a snowstorm. So we had to schedule a long 12, 13-hour shoot so that you guys came to help with.
And it's these layers of fortifications. There was a lot of support between teams.
It's getting so difficult.
Steven, you touched on something that I think would be really interesting that I wanted everyone to do when they start going into their segment. Not only do I want to talk about it and kind of have the rest of us ask questions that maybe we haven't gotten the chance to ask each other, but also start from the beginning. Take me back to how you got involved on this project, what your first recollection of the project was. I feel like everybody's going to have a little bit of a different story here. I don't know. Just I feel like my experience being brought into it and sort of the expectations and what it ended up becoming was just it was so different. It was such an interesting experience, and I'd like to hear everybody's honest take on how it went.
I feel like the common denominator is going to be Jeremy, right?
Exactly. I'm really bummed that he's not going to be here. That he
really
can't talk
wrangles
us
everybody
through.
together.
Sort of, yeah. Well, not me. So that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I think exactly. I think that the production of this film is a lot more interesting than maybe even we realize it is, So yeah, I guess let's try to talk about Jeremy's film without him here. And he's the guy. He's the creator of this. He came to. Who did he come to first? Do you guys know?
Because I know that it was August 13th of 2016. I remember that specifically because I know the day specifically because I was. Well, here's why. I had just finished a draft of my Giallo feature, which I'm still trying to work my way to getting finished. And the next day I was like, okay, I'm going to stop work on this. I need to take a break. I'm going to work on my cyberpunk thriller. And I just about I think what it was is I was sitting down to write and I decided to check Facebook impulsively. And if I hadn't done that, I would have gotten some progress because I come up and he just basically offers listen, I'm trying to get these 10 to 12 minute segments of an anthology made for all of us to get together, get us distribution, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, this is a chance for exposure. I'll take it. And that's how I kind of got involved. So I know that was how I got involved. And I think, I want to say I recommended one or two of you guys. I think it was either Calvin or Steven, I think.
You recommended me because Jeremy mentioned it when he
That's right. Yeah.
Me, and then I actually threw Calvin's name out there.
How far along was his script? Do you guys know? I mean, did he already have the idea for his short?
I think it was already finished by the time I think he.
Oh, really?
He talked to me. I'm pretty sure because his script was what set the sort of parameters of what the movie was going to be, or what at least Spunk was.
Yeah. I will say that I remember getting a draft of The Babysitter before it was finished. It actually went up to a certain point and stopped. As well as one of the original wraparound segments that his writer was working on, which was going to be these two sheriffs that were doing this investigation, and it's the sheriff is telling his rookie, this is the big thing that I want to do, and so the idea was to get Todd Robinson as that main sheriff, sort of reprising his character from Cemetery People.
I remember that.
I was gonna say, you guys remember that? That was part of my Yeah, that plays a big part in my recollection of the film. I remember getting these wraparound segments that I assumed Jeremy was writing, and that all just kind of fell apart. But yeah, it was a detective story, wasn't it?
Something like, at the very least,
Yeah.
it's the
We were
case
supposed
that
to be
he
the
had to
crime
finish.
scene. Yeah, we were like the crime scenes. Each story was a different crime scene that he went to, and I remember having to. I'll get into this more when it's my turn, but I remember reading it and going, "How the fuck am I gonna fit this together?" So yeah, Jeremy's story. Does anyone want to talk about his segment? I mean, was anybody really involved with that one? Did anyone work on that one?
I don't think because out of this group, no, because I mean there were people I know who worked on it. I know Gabe Twig was a cinematographer. I know Nick Bremer, who was one of his gaffers. I think Annihilator James was his sound guy. Obviously, LA Tara, I know her, and I know Eric Ross from who was a PA. And I remember him from Cemetery People as well. He's a really good cook. But yeah, it was a case of, with The Babysitter, it was more just kind of like watching it sort of evolve, because like when you read the script, I remember reading that initial draft of The Babysitter, it was so intense and gritty, and like there's something like kind of horrifying. It reminded me almost like a good chilling Clive Barker story, and then watching it with every like succeeding bit of development that he would add to it, like it just kind of got a little crazier and weirder, and it became more of a Jeremy Garner piece, which is cool. It's a frenetic film, so.
Right, because that segment is a pretty classic storyline of the babysitter who comes to babysit an infant and tries this drug that's in the refrigerator, and chaos ensues. I mean, she starts having hallucinations, and spoiler alert, ends up killing and eating the baby. The police arrive and are pig monsters. But it's also got this really interesting twist, and I wanted to ask him about his choice to have like a studio audience.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's got this sitcom feel, and even the exteriors of the house. I mean, he was probably trying to go for like a Roseanne kind of thing.
Again with the Roseanne. This keeps coming up on this podcast.
My language.
I could see Zach in the corner of my eye. It just went straight to Roseanne.
Yeah, no, I like the sitcom stuff. I mean, there's such a tonal shift between the beginning and the end. Makes it a fun 10 minutes.
I just love his he's got a good 80s sensibility and a grindhouse sensibility, and I just love that everything stops for that little dance sequence that Tara has.
Which
it's
I'm
a
so
good
glad.
bridge. Be the normal stuff at the beginning to all of a sudden the hardcore trip out. Yeah, it's great.
And it's a good shift that they decided to do that, because originally it was a very kind of sleazier thing that happened. It wasn't a dance scene. It's like she takes the drugs, she starts to trip out, and then she wakes up in the middle of masturbating. And it was like, it was a good shock. It was a good weird shock. And I think it's like the script describes it as like the sound of like someone stabbing a jar of mayonnaise.
Oh, jeez.
But
I
but
speak for all of us when I say that there should never be masturbation in a spunk film.
But,
I was that was going to be my next question. Everybody else caught on to the jizz jokes, for lack of a better term. I didn't. I mean, I didn't write my script, but my mind doesn't immediately go there. I mean, what is it with you guys? Did you guys have this side conversation without me and said, "Oh, we're all going to make a bunch of like drinking jizz jokes," or
I think
everyone just get there individually?
In the script for The Babysitter, I'm pretty sure it was described as cum-like, or I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
But there was something that made it seem fairly cum-like.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never referred to it as spunk, so it wasn't where my mind went at any point in time. So I think it's funny that everybody went there. Everybody went pretty much with the either with, in Steven's case, referencing it as a sexual innuendo, or Zach straight up drinking it out of condoms, and you, Chris, as well.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, I think. Yeah, and it's I think because Garner's segment has it, mine has it, Zach has it. I mean, yeah, it always the prophylactics. I love that's recurring. I loved when we had the I want to make sure to mention this before I forget, but I remember at the premiere when we got to show this at the Clinton Street Theater, I'm sure you guys, some of those of you who were there, remember like even the last time that joke happens, which is like in the last like 3 minutes of the movie before the credits, it's still got a groan out of the audience. Like,
yeah.
We done it 4 times and it's still got people. I love that.
Good. I'm glad that it should.
Fucking nasty.
I don't think that you don't ever get desensitized to that.
Right. You shouldn't.
Yeah, nor should you.
When I heard about the project, it seemed like a real challenge. To write something where you're slightly winking about the subject matter, but also just writing something that's a decent story. And I had 3 different directors of photography turn down the movie, and then 2 actors turned it down. They just thought it was too gross. And I had a lot more like spunk drinking in my initial script and stuff. But
I remember that.
People were disturbed, and people thought it was like this worse than porn thing or something. They just did not want to be involved.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, you can't take any of this seriously at all.
I mean, I love actually, Brian, your older scripts that were far more kind of outrageous. My take was it's like, what if Rob Zombie directed a Bob Camp Ren and Snippy episode? Was kind of my take on it.
I like that. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, should we move on from Jeremy's, because it seems like no one worked on it. No one really knows what to say about it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty incestuous project, I think, though, because Gabe, who shot Jeremy's, also worked on mine as an AC, and then we used Nick's lights, and Nick worked on the babysitter as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think Gabe even did a day for us. That's right, he did a day for us. He got some of our best shots, like the shot of Corey in his hands, looking at his hands. That was all Gabe.
Cool.
Yeah. So cool. I guess Zach, you're next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the order of spunking. Mine was next.
I like my spot in the middle.
Yeah. But yeah, I took the cum joke inherent in the original script and really ran with it. Mine was more it was more the style, and the idea was more economical, because I wasn't living in Portland at the time, and I knew I was going to be there fairly soon for like 2 or 3 days. Wow. So it had to be something that I could shoot really quickly. And, my areas of interest are garbage VHS and Satanic Panic and, and wiener jokes.
That's why we get along so well.
Pretty sure I shot it within 24 hours. We did the Reverend stuff in Johnny's garage one night, and the kickball the next morning at the park down the street.
That's
so it was all shot in like a 2-block
radius. There's a remarkable amount of production design in the garage stuff. I mean,
yeah,
quite set.
That was all there. It was all just there. That was Jeff, who plays the catcher. His brother is a sculptor, and he was like paying Johnny to store this giant scary man sculpture in his garage.
Cool.
I think the only thing I bought were those candles, tall candles.
Oh my gosh.
To set it up. But yeah, because it was so easy to shoot, there was hardly any camera movement, if any. I think I did one tilt at one point. But we were able to actually put some time into making it look nice, even if I was going to degrade it eventually.
Mm-hmm. I did actually have a real quick question about The Devil's Spunk. Was that I remember your script had a whole other segment that was never even shot, the slumber party sequence. I was curious if there was 2 things, I guess. So obviously you sort of answer the question of why it was not ended up being done, but I was curious if there was a case of you were sort of trying to gauge which do the kickball segment or do the slumber party segment. Was that something you ever thought about having to do, or was it pretty obvious?
I was originally going to do them both, but as I was cutting it together, it was already like, I was already hitting like between 8 and 9 minutes, and and I knew that the movie was good. There were so many segments. The movie was going to be kind of long once we got this wraparound, which the wraparound was the last thing to come in. So I kind of just one, it would have involved another trip to Portland and I'm lazy. And two, I felt like it was already long enough and I didn't want to, it's such a goofy, like inherently dumb segment. I really didn't want it to overstay its welcome. That's the kind of thing where you really want to get in and get out.
I gotta tell you, dude, that movie or that short really makes me laugh every time I see it. It makes me howl with laughter. It was, I mean, not to be rude to anybody else's, but that's the only one that made me howl with laughter out loud every time I see it. Yeah, it gets me every time.
I mean, when I was in grade school, like, first, second, third grade, they would always wheel out this old film projector and they would show us like stranger danger movies and all that stuff. That's definitely what it feels like. Love it.
Yeah, I was really, I guess I take a lot of inspiration in my whole life from an educational video I watched in the 5th grade where a dude who played blues guitar taught me how to masturbate.
So how did you get...
I have questions there, but let's move on.
First off, Zach.
Yeah.
Are you wearing a necromantic t-shirt?
Wearing a necromantic 2 shirt, yeah.
Oh my God. That's
lounging
beautiful.
in bed.
That's beautiful. Did Severin release that? Sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent.
No, Cult Epics.
Cult Epics. Oh man, that made me lose my my next question. How did you get brought into this project? How early on were you introduced, and who came to you? And did you have any other ideas before the school scare film?
No, that was the first thing I wrote for it, and Jeremy hit me up, invited me to a super secret Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And then I read his script, and that was about it. I don't remember who was involved at that point, but I've known Jeremy for a while, since like the all hell breaks loose.
Oh yeah,
cut some trailers for him. I wrote a script that maybe he'll make someday called
Dick Nippers.
It's pretty
yeah.
Oh, I've read that.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Yeah, I love that script, but haven't finished all of it yet. But I love that's a good one, and it's perfectly suited to Jeremy's style, where he makes he's able to direct really engaging characters, but also make this completely preposterous world at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Someone needs to give him at least $50,000 to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I literally don't recall who else was involved, because it was also a while ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Date,
yeah,
like
3
Chris does.
years.
Yeah.
But this has been a long gestating project.
Mm-hmm. So actually, go ahead and continue talking while we're going. I'm actually going to pull up the group on Facebook and start scrolling through the history. So go ahead.
The original post.
Oh yeah.
Right.
The OG post.
Oh geez.
Man, but then what the next segment is Brian's after mine.
Mm-hmm.
Was your experience fairly similar? Did Jeremy
I don't know where I was when I was asked versus when all you were asked, but he came to me and said, hey, I got a couple other people involved. I think he mentioned at least Chris and maybe Calvin, and I think I was open to making something, but I was just out of ideas at the moment. And so it's nice when somebody locks down the ideas for you, or a little structure for you to, make some stuff up. In this case, he's giving me Spunk, and I have to come up with something to make. And like I said, once I wrote it, it was very strange writing something where people get uncomfortable when they read it, or they turn it down or something. And so it was kind of a rough time getting it off the ground, but eventually we did, and I think we shot it in like 4 days, and
I'm still amazed at the amount of production value you had for those 4 days, of shooting. I mean, there's so much coverage. You've got the Ronin work, you've got the dolly shots, you actually laid down track in the location. You did an amazing job marshaling the troops together for that. And then do you feel like your experience having done like the Grand Guignol and 48-hour film stuff had assisted you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was kind of that spirit, getting something together really fast and, shooting it really fast and being organized, but not having much time or resources. Getting Evan Gandy as the director of photography was key because he's worked on so many things and in so many different capacities. He's like a sound guy and all that. So he was able to pull all these people that, might not have been willing to work on the project otherwise into working on it. And so, yeah, that was it. I mean, a lot of people just, donating a lot of time and energy to make it happen. But yeah, we had a big cast and crew, which was really fun. Yeah, and then we had, I'm trying to think which day we shot Calvin's sequence.
I think it was day one.
Yeah, right. Day one, out in the alley.
As a cast member, my recollection of that set was moving really, really smoothly. I remember it just kind of zooming by. I also really wanted to be the lead in that short. I really wanted to be the lead in that segment, and we did a rehearsal at the location, and I forget his name, the actor who plays the lead. Yeah, he wasn't there, and I was filling in for his character. I was reading and rehearsing, and of course, just being a typical actor the entire time, I'm like, I'm gonna blow this out of the water, and he's gonna hire this fucking guy. He's gonna call him up and be like, don't bother, and it's gonna be me. So I mean, I remember really trying to go for it in those rehearsals too, man. I
remember that. You were great, man. You would have been a great option. Yeah.
I also remember really early on, for one of the drug dealers, it was for either my part or Donnie's part. You wanted Daniel Stewart to play that part, and Daniel, I told him that he could be the lead in ours, and I remember you and I think it may have been one of the first times that we ever chatted one-on-one, and I was like, well, I want to give him a bigger part, and then I think I ended up saying, look, I'll play Daniel's part, and I was trying to weasel myself in there. That was my way of getting everything I wanted.
I think we have a small, community, and again, our projects are all like everybody's kind of bleeding into the next segment and all that. Because I know Chris had the same experience with me with an actor that we were both like, should she be in mine? Should she be in yours?
Elise, yeah. It was a case of, because she was original choice for the Lara character, but it was a case of, I know Brian's better with actors than me, and it was like, Elise deserves to work with Brian. But in the long run, I actually think that worked out really well. I really enjoyed
Steven as well, right?
Yeah, I think Elise was one of my first messages, and she was like, that's what ended up happening with this, was everybody started picking people, and then
well, and that's kind of funny. I think we should probably get to it. I think we get to yours, but how Laura ended up in yours.
Yeah, I've got.
Yeah, I think everyone has a story of how like the long trek she took to get into the movie.
Yeah. So the idea, right, was that nobody cheats and plays multiple characters.
Yeah.
Right. I think the only cheat is that, and it's not quite a cheat, but Brett plays in your wraparound sequences, right. And he's also, is he in one of the full segments?
So Brett is in,
because he's in my PSA.
The PSA, and then in the segment. I technically cheated a little bit, and I've talked to you guys, I think, about this in the past, is Stewart and Brett are both in the hallway action scene in High Score, but they have gas masks on, so you can't tell who it is.
Right. Okay.
And I was trying...
That's not a cheat.
Yeah, we need to see their face.
Yeah. But, and we were trying to get Elise as one of the corpses at the very end of High Score as well, but yeah, she was pretty sick that day, so it was like, no, stay home. Don't infect us, please.
Yeah, did you guys all hear the story about Elise getting sick on my movie?
I just heard that recently from Bill. Yeah, I heard about that.
It was crazy. I mean, like, we told them, like, do not put tomatoes on her burrito. Do not. But somehow, like, the rice touched the burritos or something. And, she's acting in the scene, and her throat just closes off completely. And we were thinking, oh, God, do we have to take her to the hospital or something? And, of course, being, like, a terrible, selfish director, I'm like, oh, God, I hope she's okay, and I hope she can keep acting in the movie. And it turned out okay, but she would, like, come in, act a scene, and then I'd be like, cut, and then she'd go to the bathroom, vomit, come back out, do another take. Crazy, so.
Yeah, she was hanging out one day with with Natalie and I, and she ate a Cheez-It, and all hell broke loose. She had to like take a bunch of medication and stuff, and you never know how many things. I can see Zach laughing. You never know how many things have tomato paste or powder until you have somebody who can't have it, and you're walking up and down the aisles of Winco just looking at the back of shit, going, nope, nope, nope.
And I think a few months before I came up with the idea, I had seen this giallo that's now one of my favorites called Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, which is this Ennio Martino one. And it's kind of weird and not super exciting in some ways, but it has this opening credit sequence where these two bodies are having sex, but they're so mostly out of focus that it's like these glowing orbs kind of in slow motion. It's really strange. And so like I try to do that for the opening scene where the close-ups of the injecting the drug and all that. We used like a tilt shift lens to kind of get that effect.
Right.
Black background.
Yeah. I love Spunk of the Reaper. That was an impressive piece. And it's amazing just how pretty that one looks.
It's so technically good that it just doesn't belong in the film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just doesn't. It's a weird tonal shift because it looks too good. The actors are too good. Like nobody's playing it up. It just doesn't belong, man. You're the odd one out. You go, but this one's got some artistic merit. Well, so does Chris's, but Chris's is still like fun.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have so many people on the set, all these talented people that I could point at and be like, do talented things, and they would do it. But I think we all had some aspect of our film, whether it's like a technical aspect or a story aspect that was different from all the others, and then a lot of other things that brought them together. But yeah.
Well, there was a reason that I really wanted to be in it as an actor. I mean, looking at the script and looking at the crew and the fact that, holy shit, there's a rehearsal for this. Growing up, I was like, oh man, how do I get a better...
I think we had 2 or 3 rehearsals, and Patty came to every one, and she doesn't have a single line of dialogue in the movie.
Yeah,
it was great.
People were really dialed in, and that one felt like an actual movie.
And
was that the mom in the movie?
That was the mom, yeah.
Yeah, she was awesome.
Yeah.
And going with the Robert Rodriguez school of like write for like what you have at your disposal. At that period, I was just writing all my movies to take place at my friend David Brecka's house, and then that's where that one takes place.
Right.
Yeah, I was at a meeting there like last June, and I walk in and realize, oh shit, I know where this is. I remember seeing Stevie Miller get his head blown off right over there.
And so, yeah, we used like the main unit of the house for that movie, and then he staggers out to the back unit, which was still being built at the end of Spunk the Reaper. And then, of course, we used the interiors of that for Corpse later, my other movie. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite little moments from that production was Dave Hitt. Dave Hitt helped out with some of the effects. I think he did like the arm and stuff. And I was helping him unload his car because I like Dave Hitt. He's a friend of mine. So we're unloading his car, and all of those arms are these big fisting dildos that you get at sex shops.
Oh, okay.
I was like one in my trunk for like forever, and it might still be there. It's just this fist with a syringe sticking out of it.
And I remember he just like comes from his trunk with just an armful of big giant dildos shaped as fists, and I'm like, what is going on? What is this? Like, oh, this is for the arm for injecting.
And I'd always heard that for The Thing, John Carpenter, people were calling him a pornographer of violence just for like the extreme close-ups of the needles going into the arms. So that's really why I wanted to do that. I wanted to be a pornographer of violence. So we had these extreme close-ups of the needle shots, which makes everybody squirm.
Wow.
Did Requiem for a Dream play any? Did that have any influence on Requiem?
Did what have any? Oh, Requiem for a Dream. Yeah, I mean. I was really thinking of The Thing. I mean, Requiem for a Dream, those cuts are very like, fast, and mine was kind of, the style of it was really slow, so I didn't think about that too much. But I think, you know what, I did specifically think of one moment for Requiem for a Dream, which is probably the moment you're talking about, where he's in the car and you see that.
Yeah,
hole in his arm.
Yeah.
So, no, you're 100% right. And I think my thinking was, I want to do something that's even more disgusting than that. And hopefully it gets there. But yeah, I remember seeing that I think I was in college, and we were all pretty inebriated and watching that movie for the first time, and it was traumatizing.
I love that movie. Natalie and I both love that movie. It's a weird, morbid curiosity. We watch that movie for fun.
that explains a lot.
No, yeah, I mean that should give you an idea of what our relationship is like. Let's watch these people go through their own personal hell, but a real hell. I don't want to see any fake shit. I want to see some horrible suffering that actually happens in the world.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
It's a well-made movie. I'll say that. Never look at Keith David the same way again.
Oh my god.
Oh, he's the best part of that too. God, he is so horrifying and creepy. He's too good at playing that part.
He's way
too good. Too
yeah, just to hear that UPS, like, what can Brown do for you voice, say those things to Jennifer Connelly. It's just, it's rough, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got off track. All right.
Yeah. So back on track then is, I think, Calvin, you're next with Spunky Shines and where that all came from.
Yeah. Oh man. So let me go all the way back here. We mentioned Laura. So I'm pretty sure I was the last one to be brought into this project. I could be wrong. If we go back and look through the chats, maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I was at least one of the last ones to be brought onto this project. That summer, that late summer, it must have been August. Mm-hmm. I was doing a little feature film called If These Walls Could Talk. It's on Kings of Horror right now. You can watch it. And it stars Laura Welsh, and it features Elise Fosmark. And as soon as we finished that film, I mean, it must have been a couple of days later, I get this message, I believe, from Steven. And Steven goes, hey, man, we're going to do this anthology film. And
that sounds like me. That holds up.
I think we got to – I'm trying to do a voice. No, he's like there was like a timeline. I swear to fucking God there was a timeline when I entered the group. I swear at one point –
like a time frame to finish the movie?
Yeah.
There definitely was.
I think so, and I think I finished mine, Halloween. And then it was the first one sitting there for a while.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
2 months. We had 2 months. So we had 2 months, man. So anyway, I think Steven, correct me if I'm wrong. At one point, was Jason Hawkins involved in this?
Not that I
recall either.
I don't recall that.
I thought that somebody dropped out, and that's why I was on board.
It was Joe Sherlock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was the Blood Creek woodsman himself. Yeah.
Somebody dropped out, and I was brought on, and I think that was you. I think you were the one who's like, oh, I know someone who's stupid enough to do this.
Was I the one that actually contacted you though? I don't remember that.
I think you were. I think you messaged me. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy might have sent me over to find you. To get you on board.
So then I joined the group, and like I said, man, this may have even been before we actually finished If These Walls Could Talk, which is shot in the exact same apartment. And my first reaction, I of course said yes, because I'm not going to turn down a really cool opportunity like this. But I was so brain fried, my real reaction was, and I think I actually remember saying this, I don't want to fucking do this. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I was completely brain wiped. I was really actually, I had a really bad attitude about it at first. Too bad Josh isn't here. He would be the one to ask. I had a really negative attitude towards it, and Josh just had this old script lying around from years back, and he goes, well, let's see if we can just shoehorn some shit in, and we'll see how this goes, And I was like, great, let's do it. We got your apartment. We'll just reuse the same place. I reused shot lists from If These Could Talk, and just somehow worked it into this script. If you watch those movies back to back, you will see the shots. There are just recreations of shots in that short.
I just figured out a couple of them. It's mostly the mediums on Brianna, isn't it? It's some of those.
All the stuff in the bathroom are the exact same.
Yeah.
Those lights needed to be set up. We were just like, boom. I wanted to do the least amount of work as possible. And just being candid here, I just wanted to be candid about it. I had a very bad attitude. My recollection of shooting that short is not good.
Oh, God.
I really just didn't know where this was gonna go at the end of the day. And I was like, we got a month to do this, and I just finished shooting something that I want to start editing now. So we go in, we decide to shoot it, and I just assumed that since I had worked with Laura for like 5 weekends in a row, I didn't even ask her. I just figured it was going to be an, are you kidding me? I don't get this. So I went and got Daniel Stewart first and said, I need a female lead, dude. I know you know people. And he brought Arissa. And honestly, I don't mean to, like, I feel like now I'm being super negative, but Arissa was the best thing that came out of that short for me, was meeting and working with Arissa. That is like the one silver lining in it. And I remember her even showing up to the first day, and we didn't have any scenes of hers to shoot. And like I said, I was in a bad mood. I was tired from the last film, and I remember going, oh, what the fuck does she want to show up for? She's going to show up and she's going to judge this thing. Like, I just need her to show up and do the scene. I don't need her to show up and help out. But it ended up going really, really well. We brought Brianna in as well. And yeah, as far as the production goes, I don't really have much to say other than I had nothing. The script was Josh's. He had this idea of doing something with this guy who's going on a date, and then you figure out that he's been like killing and eating people. And my one contribution to that was expanding it out, adding a female character who it's like that line from Star Wars, there's always a bigger fish, is what I said. And he went and added those scenes in. The only line of dialogue I wrote, I think the movie ended, or the short ended with Daniel being tied up in a bed. And she was like cutting off his leg or something. And Josh was like, oh, it was like fry up some steaks or something, you know? And I said, no, we got to do something else. And I said, I literally, I can go back and find you the text message too. I said, she should say something like, the last time I cut some guy's dick off, he just cried for a few hours until he bled out. And he wrote it line for line. And
oh man, Shakespeare.
No.
We called up Zach and said, what do we need to do to cut Daniel Stewart's wiener off? And the rest is history. That was all shot in my sister's apartment. I mean, there was
I feel like you're skipping some steps there. What do we need to do to cut off his dick? And then?
And then what?
Did you mold his penis?
Oh, no. He just, I didn't know you guys didn't know how we pulled off that effect. No, that's just some silicone dildo from a sex store.
Some random penis?
I just went in and bought it, and Zach sat there when we were like shooting scenes, and he's just painting this dick in the corner, and then it's all right, put it in a pickled jar and have Arissa have a surprise for him when he wakes up.
I think that's really good writing, Calvin, because I think the movie's only half as good if you don't have that whole bigger fish aspect. And especially, I mean, you want to see this guy get his comeuppance. So it's pretty cool.
If there was any one thing that maybe I feel like I actually contributed to that, it was kind of like that Reagan-esque, Reagan-era style of like crack. You know, we just kind of wanted it to seem kind of grimy and do it in this, kind of make it seem like it's in the city. That's why we shot at that coffee shop in Portland, which is also all Josh and Daniel pulling that together. Like I said, I really was not in the best mood for doing it. I edited the thing super quick, got it out there, got it done, and then as the months went on and everybody kept working on it, I started thinking, oh no, what did I do? And if there's one thing in my air quotes career that I could go back and change, it would be that short. I would have done something else. If I was smart, I would have taken my time like the rest of you guys did.
Oh man. It's so good. Yeah, I love it.
It's the one thing that I can't really watch. There's just no TLC that went into it, and my recollection of it, like my memory of making it, is frankly just not good. So it's actually something that I care very little about.
Funny, Calvin, I think a lot of the giallos and the grindhouse shit that we love, like these guys don't give a shit when they're making it. Like that's just workman's bullshit, you know. So it's kind of in the spirit of that.
Yeah.
And I think to speak positively of it as well is that, I mean, you basically, like, when I saw that segment, it's like, this is the one that feels like a low budget horror movie. Like, there was all these sort of ideals that, like, Brian and I were trying to hit. And, you know, Zach has this very, like, kitchen sink DIY, you know, it felt like a Suck My Flick Attack of the Flicks short that you would see. Which I say as a compliment because I love those things, but it's like with the sort of the tone and the music and the way like the staging of Spunky Shines, that feels like a Jim Wynorski movie to me. And again, I say that positively. You know,
I like Jim Wynorski. He's my friend on Facebook. I message him all the time. I do. I really do. No.
But that's what I'm getting at, is that there is a wonderful it feels the most legit, and I think it's like the years of like how you've sort of filled your brain and your DNA, you know, has been transferred into this, you know, VHS schlock horror, you know, B movie, you know, love fest inside your brain. It still translates. At least I feel it does. And especially with the way that you get the chemistry between Stuart and Arissa. And like, I remember my dad, you know, when he was cutting the trailer for the future, for the anthology itself, I remember him commenting that he really loved the awkward, like, little touches that Stuart gives to the performance. And, you know, as much as you could say, like, you feel very disconnected from it, I mean, you were still there. You were still making those decisions. And so you're still part of that process. So don't sell yourself short, man.
No, I mean, it's one that Josh really deserves quite a bit more for that short than I do. He's the one who actually probably forced me to do it. There were so many times where I remember saying, I don't even want to do this. So yeah, I had a better time, like, as far as being on set. I had a much better time shooting Stevens. I felt relaxed, and I actually wanted to be doing it. I wasn't just recycling some shot list from a previous film and kind of being afraid to ask people from the previous project to show up. I went and got all people to help out with this.
That's funny. I like that. Not everything's fun. Not everything. You know, like, I appreciate that.
It's fine. I'm probably putting too much of a negative spin on it. But when we were talking about it and doing this podcast, I was like, now's my time to actually really say, I dropped the ball. Like, I just was not in a good mood.
Well, I'd seen Daniel Stewart in a few things, but it was that short where I was like, oh, Daniel's awesome. And I cast him in a little 8mm movie after that, just based on seeing your movie. So
yeah, I love Arissa in that too. I think I cannot not cast her as a crazy person, because, you know, I hang out with Arissa quite frequently. I mean, she's a friend of mine that I love very dearly, and she maybe is that character a little bit. She's maybe a little bit psychotic. Not maybe. She's definitely a little bit. There's something in there that if you push her too far, you'll wake up in her bathtub. You will.
And to think, I remember I did BTS on one of the Drunk Show episodes that she was in, where she played an intoxicated screamer with throwing grenades at everybody. Just hearing that about her now just makes it think, like, God, like, were we really playing with fire that day?
Yes, you are. Every time you do that stuff.
For once, we had someone more than Greg James to be worried about.
And she gets into it just way too easily. On Jesus I Was Evil, she's one of my leads, obviously, and she just relishes every time you ask her to do something really fucked up or really mean. You just go, hey, can you just vamp here and go crazy and just try and destroy this person's soul, make fun of the way they look. She goes, really? And just, she's great. She's great. She's one of the best people to work with in town. She really is.
Right. So I think that covers Spunky Shines pretty well. I didn't have any other questions to ask about the film, but yeah. So I guess moving on to Mr. Jackley.
Yes. What do you need to know? I'm looking at when it started. I'm seeing August 19, 2016.
Yeah, man. I was shooting. If these folks could talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am thinking back while we're all talking. I moved to Southeast Portland. I didn't have a job or anything at that time. So now a lot of stuff is like coming back with Calvin's whole negative outlook of this whole thing. But it actually getting pushed back is kind of what helped me be in it, because once I moved out to Southeast Portland and I didn't have a job, I had to struggle a little bit. I didn't have the time by the time frame he ended up giving me. I remember that now. Mm-hmm. And then Jeremy was like, I'm not doing mine until January. I'm like, fuck, sweet. Awesome. That works out perfect.
And I mean, I'll talk about this perhaps a little more when I get to mine, but just to quickly interject, I had no delusions that this was going to get done by Halloween or by the end of the year. I knew
That's true.
There was no fucking way.
I remember some conversations with you.
We had 2 months to, and nobody clued me in on that. Nobody said, hey, Calvin, cool down, take some time.
I also, nobody had hopped on to be like, I'm going to do the frame story for a long time, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That was all in the air.
We should definitely get to that.
Yeah, can I mention that really quick? At least, I don't know if we all got the same wraparound story, but I remember our story, something being mentioned, like one of the detectives says something about the dude shitting his pants, or that there's diarrhea all over. And I remember sitting down with Josh when we're trying to like fit this his script into the Spunk universe and going, what the fuck are we gonna do to fit diarrhea? And he's like, you're not gonna do that to my apartment. I said, fair enough. I'll have to bring it in somehow. They'll have to justify it in the story. when whoever edits this together is just gonna have to deal with the fact that we didn't follow the diarrhea line. We're not.
Oh my god.
Do you guys remember that? Or
I think I remember that. Yeah.
I vaguely remember something about it. Yeah.
Originally, they wanted all of these segments to end with someone getting diarrhea everywhere.
No, it's just that it was. I think what it was is they were like placeholders. I think for the like to set up some something that could be tweaked around a little bit, or at the very least get something started.
Off point, really.
Because I would have run with that.
I bet you would. Yeah.
I have perfect
boner juice.
Yeah, you got to watch The Unquenchable Thirst for Boner Juice and see the perfect diarrhea shot. So that's my proudest moment on that movie is the shot of John pooping in the bucket.
So Stephen, what was your process for coming up with Zombie?
Kind of the same thing. Like I'm assuming we all got the same. It's a drug. It's called Spunk, and use that. And like, I honestly, it was funny. I didn't even think about like putting them in condoms. I know like a lot of your guys's was like that.
Mine wasn't even liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really like the what Brian Hiltner did, making it the needle brought something different to it. But yeah, with mine it was just more like I kept coming up with these concepts that didn't mean anything, like really artificial. And then eventually I was like, well, what about a separate strand, like weed, different kind of spunk drug. And then once I did that, I've never done a zombie story before. So that kind of helped me push me along a little bit.
So not only was this your first spunk film, it popped your zombie cherry?
It popped my zombie cherry, yes. I don't know if it was necessarily my first spunk film. We just didn't call it Spunk. Anyway. But yeah, and I always I think, Elise, I haven't worked with her for a while, so she was my first go-to. She was the first one plucked from Brian Hiltner. And then the funny thing is the delay that I was talking about earlier is what actually got Laura on this project, Laura Welsh, who needed to be on this. I feel like
Yeah,
we were trying to
100%.
find a spot for her.
Yeah,
100%.
because when I asked her, she said she was going to be. I think she mentioned she was going to be in Zach's, and then when I came back, and then she was going to be in mine, and that didn't work out for my schedule, which then freed her up for yours.
Well, it didn't free her up at first. When I was in January, she wasn't going to be in it. It's when it got delayed that she says, "Oh, I can put in a day in February to."
Okay, so because of the snowstorm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we got her, but we also lost a day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean that staging of like you needed one day for that dialogue and another day for the zombie stuff.
I had it perfectly set up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I had the sheets and ready to go, the call sheets and everything. I was super excited, but I'm glad I didn't, because once I sent those messages out, like there were people that were like, "Thanks, I would have came, but I was scared to come."
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I feel good not making you come to this Spunks Not Dead shoot.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the other thing, just a real quick question also I had was, you as a writer, I notice you often really are very, very character driven. You're really good. You really, that's something you kind of specialize in, is characters and dialogue. Did the concept of the slumber party and that stuff come up first, or was it sort of creating the characters and then figuring out what would be the sort of the best situation to put them in?
Ooh, I think it just kind of was hand in hand, like, because I knew I wanted 3 women, like I knew that was what it's going to be, but I didn't want like the teenage women. I thought it'd be funnier if they're like 25,
but they act a bit immature.
Act a bit immature. But I mean, I think just based on like what a lot of us had, we had a house, we had this garage, I had a room, and a cool hallway that I haven't utilized yet. So it was more like, what can I utilize and what would get people there? And so slumber party just kind of fit. I think it like originally was just like people getting high, and then it was like, well, they might as well just be doing that sleepover, which a couple of the actors really got into with their pajamas selection. So that was great.
Nice.
Yeah, your story is the only one that, in true low budget indie horror, in that sense, has lesbian sex. I was trying to find a better way to say it, but it's got like implied girl on girl action. So I find that really interesting.
Let's not pretend that there's actual lesbian sex in my. It's implied lesbian sex.
Well, you gotta get people to watch this.
Yeah.
After your rundown of your segment, I'll bring them back with lesbian sex.
Right. No,
but also, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say also bringing in the fact that like when we did get delayed, one of the big things that actually made me not just want to be like, fuck it, I don't want to do this, it sucks, was Calvin being like, well, fuck it, I'll shoot it, and Chris coming in, fuck it, I'll do whatever to help. This is the most I think that we had, like, of all the people who were responsible for making all of the films come together. Like everybody came in,
right.
And got it done.
We have that. I think that's where that one photo comes from, where it's the 3 of us, the 3 directors.
And it was that conversation that we had where it was just like, fuck it, we'll do it. Let's get it done, just to make sure that we get it done properly.
Right.
And yeah, so that was nice. And then also, I can't let it go without mentioning how amazing Zach Smith is.
Yeah.
Who's the MVP of our shoot. I think he was in so many segments helping out.
Yeah. Because
he did the really cool effect for my zombie eye getting gouged. It was great.
And the thing is because those of us that were there understand this, but to explain is that Zach did all the zombie makeup within the space of, what do you figure, about 5 hours?
Shit, yeah. It was maybe even sooner than that. Like, he was.
So I mean, that's the bites, the blood, the palification, and the eyeball, all within that space of time.
And I'm like, I know he wasn't happy with some of the makeup, and I was just like, dude, you did so much for so little time.
Yeah, but he's a really harsh critic of himself. He's been doing that for my new movie that he just worked on too.
Yeah. He's an amazing effects artist, and he's his harshest critic. Like, he's another guy that comes over and we just watch movies, and we talk about projects, and every project. You think I was complaining about Spunky Shines, man? He'll sit there and talk shit about his own work all day, and he's an amazing artist. I think
he's his awesome cameo in yours.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's in mine. He's naked. He still gives me shit to this day. He was like, you got to get a nice shot, full-blown wiener in the. And I was like, all right, dude, we'll do it. You have to get a shot of my dick in the shower. So I get it, I edit it, and I'm like, I'm just gonna like, it's gonna be a quick flash and still to this day, he laments about that his dick didn't get enough screen time in my short.
It's 8 frames, I think. It's like 4 to 8 frames, if I recall. Because I remember like having to double check when I was finally putting it together. It was like, wait, this is the only nudity in this movie. Like, you know, it did a double take.
Yeah, he wanted it showcased quite a bit longer. And he still gives me shit for that.
Longer, I'm sure. Yes.
Other than that, we would have probably been PG-13, right?
The gore, I think, still, and the language for sure. Yeah,
sure.
But
Fine, I guess.
The whole thing is drug use. Like
too much fun.
Drug use. Yeah.
Chris, isn't there also a dick shot in your movie? An alien dick shot?
And has his nuts. Yeah.
I think that
and the wraparound. Yeah, it's got it's got this little teeny. It was supposed to be bigger, like it's supposed to be this giant dong and this giant hanging like sack.
That's what they all say.
What happened was that there was 2 things. The first was that the guy who sculpted it, Jeremy Phelps, he was kind of, I think he decided, well, if it's going to be like flaccid and drained, it should be kind of shriveled up. It's like, okay. And then with the sack, the sack was a case of where he designed a couple versions that had the sack and it just didn't play really well, or like so there was a problem with the material he was using because he had to make it really fast. Like I was asking for him to put that together in like 2 weeks or less. And so, because I was trying to get everything done on that wraparound so quickly. But that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, that's true. There is the alien dick in there. For a second there, I thought you were talking about the spunky puppet, but yeah, never mind.
Yeah, that's a little phallic looking too.
What does that represent, I wonder?
And really quickly, just going back to Laura Welsh, who also deserves a huge shout out because she's also one of the best people in the Portland film community to work with. She's amazing. It's so funny. I didn't ask her to be in the short because she's such a classy actress and deserves like really good roles. And so many times when I'm making a film, I end up not asking her because I just assume that she wouldn't want to do it. Like I would never make Laura or try to make Laura do something that she feels is beneath her, which is probably all of my films. But it was the same thing with Jesus, I Was Evil. I held off for months. She ends up playing the Girl Scout in Jesus, I Was Evil, and just couldn't find anybody to play it. Nobody wanted to play that part, and I fought it for so long. I was like, I'm not even going to ask Laura. I'm not even going to send her this script. It's just so beneath her. And then she got the script and she goes, yeah, that looks great. Let's do it. So she must have been either out of work or maybe she actually thought it was funny.
Which then reminds, I guess, there's 2 questions that I also then have for Zombie that, be able to use that as a jumping off point. First is that now that we've heard all this about Laura, how did she respond to the Zombie script, and being able to be involved in your project?
She seemed down. I told her she'd get to be a zombie.
Yeah.
And get bit. I mean, Laura seems super down. Like I've had her just recently for like a script read. She's super down to at least like to read everything and make sure.
And I got to work with her recently as the lead in my most recent short, and she was amazing. Yeah, she was incredible.
Yeah, she was really good in that.
Very intense. The other thing also I wanted to, I guess, also ask was where did you get Diana Marie? Because I felt was one of the kind of cool surprises being on set to work with.
She was, and then she got some of the bigger pops for the screening too, which is great. I met her at a film shoot, and she was an extra, and we instantly clicked. She's married. She married Glenn Goodman. But we all met that same weekend on Jerry Bell's Tinderbox, the proof of concept that he was doing. And I literally, this time actually, August, did a shout out that I needed money. So, hire me. And Jason Reynolds, who's also a part of this incestuous relationship we all have with each other, set me up with Jerry. So I just like PA'd for him a couple days. But we all met, and it was more just about her personality because, I mean, in terms of the extra, she didn't do a lot, so I couldn't really see. So I had her show up for this kind of in-person, and obviously Nicole Resner's a regular with me I work with, and then Allison was also there. And I remember just Diana trying for Nicole Resner's part, Kathy, and she messed up the lines, and it came off kind of Abby-ish.
Oh, so it was already starting to move in that.
Yeah, and so then I had to read for that, and she just like nailed it. And
it's an incredible performance to me too, because it's like, you know, because she was so believable in that part. I thought like there's like a little bit of her in there, and then you realize this is a sharp as hell woman. I mean, she served in the military. She's worked in like she's helping to file like legislation for the state government for domestic violence survivors. She is fucking awesome. Yeah, she's a great person.
And it's interesting because that personality, it's totally her personality, but it's also like you don't quite know her history until you have conversation with her.
Which is so cool. That's the humility of who she is. Yeah. But
yeah. Good experience with the actors that I had. And Calvin actually was supposed to, we talked about him being in mine as well. But I think he was more enticed by Brian Hiltner's, which, I mean, we worked together before, so I was like, go for it.
I remember really early on you holding auditions, and I think I auditioned for yours, Stephen. Yeah. But I think that was pretty early on, or we were trying to figure out, who was going to shoot, who was going to do sound, who was going to do lights. Because Chris, your dad was there, Josh was there, Zach was there. I mean, it was, that was really that was the most incestuous set.
Even Brianna was a PA.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, we really.
Oh, and even at the time, Sarah Pope was your roommate, and so we had to have Laura coming out of her room.
She helped with the door slamming.
Right. That's right.
I should have gave her a little credit, but I didn't. My bad.
Door slammer.
The last couple of years, I've been watching Slumber Party Massacre a lot, and
that movie's fucking
Zombie
great.
reminds me a lot of that, in that you've got all these women who. There's a real camaraderie. So, I mean, it's got this nice vibe, I think. Like the dialogue and all that, you really feel like these people are gelling, and you don't necessarily want to see them die, which is kind of rare for a slasher film.
I remember.
Yeah, I love that about it. And, of course, I think Slumber Party Massacre, they're all like 25 to 30 in real life, but they're playing. Like,
Right.
I really wanted to showcase, you're 25 years old. You're living with your mom. But I like the idea of that. I wrote I actually got inspired by it so much after we filmed it that I wrote 2 extra episodes. One where they're fighting demons, and then one where Abby gets enticed into joining a cult.
Oh my god!
If I had money, I would have probably.
It's the new "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia."
Yeah, the gang joins a cult.
They keep getting wrapped up in all these demonic, horrifying situations, and then casually finding their way out of it. But never happened.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, maybe.
We had a pickup day at my old.
Oh yeah, technically we did have 2 days. Yeah,
we had a pickup day there, and I remember really one of the things I remember doing was running around on that set with my camera, just kind of getting these little insert shots. I think there's some stuff of the light moving where I literally just jumped up on the couch and hit your hanging light, and then ran back down and got the shot, got it on the rig, and I was like, all right, we got the light moving. Figured that we could use that as the sex happening upstairs, and I don't know, did it end up cutting that way?
Yeah, it kind of does, because I helped on the finishing the post-production for that, and I remember seeing that it definitely it shakes a little bit. Yeah, you can still see can see the cord wiggling a bit.
Right. Yeah. Oh, kitty.
Oh. Sorry, we have been distracted by Hiltner getting a cat on his lap.
Yeah.
Is that it for Zombie Spunk? I mean, this is one we could probably talk about for a long time because so many of us were there.
That's true. If anybody has any questions, let me know. If not, we can move on to Chris.
I guess, yeah. I mean, my last question was just simply, as you said, it pretty much you kind of came together with this idea. Just was there did you consider any other concepts for your segment? Or was it...
Not strong enough for me to remember.
Okay.
Because there was a list of things that I had, and you jump back and forth, and then I literally just I ended up focusing on the actors. I knew Nicole was probably going to be a part of it. She works on most of my stuff. And then, but I always would rather write more women, so I knew it was gonna have something to do with.
I'm moving in that direction too.
Yeah. It's funner. It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It's something a little outside of yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, no. And then I think we had a really good cast lineup. I was really excited for them all to read for it.
That's about right. Oh, sorry. That is cinematographer Janica Jaiwardena going off to the gym in the background. Don't know if you heard that on the audio. Yeah. Okay, I guess you guys want me to just go ahead and jump in on high score then?
Yeah, do it.
So I'll move the microphone over this way a bit. So the thing that was interesting was when Jeremy first came to me for Spunks Not Dead, I didn't know the concept. He didn't pitch me the idea like straight out the gate, like, okay, it's going to be about this drug. He just said it was a horror anthology. And at the time, I was really excited about it because I had just finished a rewrite a month earlier of a remake of my first short film the live action short film I had done in 2005. And I've been really wanting to return to that story. And I was like, this is perfect. I've got the script. It's all done and I can, etc. And then he tells me the concept. It's like, shit, I still want to be involved, but I got to come up with something. And so there were 3 different ideas I was able to come up with over the course of like a day and a half. And I think high score ended up being the second of the ideas. But the first idea was originally more of, it was kind of like the Incredible Melting Man meets Chud. Meets kind of like the idea was going to be like this husband and wife couple that had both been cops. The husband dies. He was kind of abusive and he gets locked in a trunk. He mutates from the spunk stash that he's been buried with, and it comes out as like this weird melting zombie. And then he basically tries to make it home and sees the wife with the new husband. He gets all pissed off, and so he decides to attack the house and he's gonna have this kind of, because I thought like, okay, well, slime's cheap. So get some slime, some coloring, etc. It's messy, but it's cheap, to have a sellable effect for a monster. And then, shotguns and stuff like that, and that sort of thing. And I wasn't super feeling that. And then the third idea, I'll get back to high score in a second, but the third idea was just kind of a very simple, like, tragic story of this, like, couple that, like, they're getting hooked on the drug, and the deeper they get into it, they start to decay and rot. Because I've never seen the movie I, Zombie from the 90s. That was one of those Fangoria movies. But
I got it. Come on over. VHS, baby.
Oh, my God. I will definitely be over for that. But
it's good.
The idea I had in mind was because I heard about the scene. I read about it in Fangoria about where the guy masturbates and his cock comes off. And the idea of like, he can't even satisfy himself and it's like everything's just riding away. The idea is that basically is to watch this couple mutate and go deeper and deeper until finally they like fuck each other to death and explode. That was going to be the end of that. And I love Brian's facial expression and Zach's laugh is the two sides of the reaction I wanted out of it. And so anyway, so when it came to high score, it was the thing is when I kind of similar to Zach coming from the Satanic Panic, one of the things that I really got a kick out of when I was younger was Jack Chick. And Chick would do these there was a Chick tract, which was like these like little comics about like the evils of satanic influences. And there were these ones about Dungeons and Dragons and about like, and those are famous. They're hilarious. You can still find a bunch of these online, and they're wonderful from the whole Satanic Panic, and especially the Satanic Panic of the D&D side. Now, myself is very much someone where I consider like my number one hobby is playing video games. And I remember like in the 90s, there was Joe Lieberman, and then there was Lieutenant Grossman, and then there was all these other, and Jack Thompson and all these kind of folks, through the ages that have always had this sort of hysteria about it. And like bit by bit, I began to think of like, well, what if you did something like Mazes and Monsters, that Tom Hanks movie where Tom Hanks goes nuts because he's playing too much D&D and he has a psychotic break, which is great. When you read the story, you find out like none of that story was at all true, that it was supposed to be based on a true story. None of that was. Yeah, it was the kid had this long history of suicidal tendencies, and that's why he started to go deep into things and blah, blah, blah. But the thing that clued me in, I was like pacing around and thinking about like, oh yeah, I like do video games, do this. And then it hit me, the alien eggs, because I remembered there was a point when I was watching a lot of like Let's Plays, like Game Grumps and things like that. And there was, they played Contra. And in Contra, it starts with the military and robots and stuff. And then you realize it's aliens. It's fucking aliens doing all this stuff. And then I thought of, and like he blasts, it's like, that's how you're going to end it. Level 8 is going to be all like the eggs and the alien monster. And then I don't know how exactly it came around, but suddenly it hit me of like this kind of comical opening of trying to get the person off the drug, like, like the Christian group trying to save them. And then the character going nuts, killing the eggs, and then transforming into presents. And then it's like, well, what makes it worse? Well, then it's like, well, it's pregnancy. It's a baby shower. And that was what clued me in. And so I asked one of my best friends, Rick Baxter, who's credited in my special thanks, and also asked my dad about that concept. I said, like, okay, what do you think? And they said, that's the 3 ideas. High score, that's the one you got to do. And it's like, cool. So that's where I was off to that. And the thing in terms of what I can actually describe a little bit about the process of developing it, there was 2 things that I find anecdotally interesting. The first is that tone was really interesting to develop initially, because I had a lot of struggle with whether it was going to be over the top and action packed and fun, or if it was actually going to get darker and gritty and kind of more like Taxi Driver realism and be more of this character study about an addict. Because part of me was thinking, if Brian's doing this, if Jeremy's doing this, if Stephen and Calvin are doing this, that there's part of me that was thinking, feeling insecure, like I need to do either something different or just that I can't match that level. And so I ended up thinking, like, okay, like it's maybe I should just make this the sobering splash of cold water where you don't see the hallucination and he just walks into the house at the end and shoots up the place, and you make it really dark. And it got super dark. Like, an idea that it was cut was that when what's now the phone call conversation when Marcus is detoxing was originally going to be her coming, the kind of the ex-flame, his crush object, coming over. And he's starting to get really upset, and she's trying to be supportive, and he snaps at her to the point that, like, this is a pregnant woman. He actually, like, pins her to the bed and, like, puts his fist up to her face, like he's going to punch her out. And that was when I realized, like, okay, this could go into a very realistic and very horrifying sort of direction, and I'm not sure whether to do that. And so over time, I began to try to sort of split the difference by deciding to have, like, the idea of, like, let's pull the rug out from the audience at the very end. Let's make them root for this character, have fun, and then say, guess what you were rooting for? And that was my kind of that process for writing it. So for shooting it, I was another person that had suffered, kind of like Steven. I had a lot of delays. There was issues with casting. It was difficult to, and then we did the majority of the filming in November. I knew I wasn't going to make it by October 31st. We were trying, but I just knew it wasn't going to happen. I think our first day was November 4th. So we got close, but not quite, to at least start shooting near there. And what happened was, after the initial, 3 days, we began to realize this is taking a lot longer. The script is more complicated. It's like a 12-page script that ended up turning into like it's a 21-minute film, I think. And anyway, so it just was a case of where things kind of got stretched out further and further. Like I said, I had no delusions that this was all going to be finished up and wrapped up by, like, spring. I just knew it wasn't going to happen, because just the
Thanks for pulling me in, by the way.
I apologize. That's a
I mean, I knew.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of that comes down to is one of the interesting issues with the project was that there was not as much communication between all of us. I mean, it's interesting that we all ended up working in each other's orbit. And I mean, in many respects, actually, with the exception of Babysitter and Devil Spunk, it's three of the 6 segments I had my fingers in somehow. Like, even in the case of Reaper, I did the color grade at the very end. And it's a case of when you have that type of, it seems like that was all part of the plan, but unfortunately it wasn't. Like, there wasn't like that organization, and some of it was just we were busy. Jeremy, we didn't know who to rely, exactly who was going to be taking charge. And, like, part of me even at one point thought about actually not doing my segment at all, and actually, like, stepping back to be a producer to make sure to get everyone together on the same page. But yeah, so whereas a lot of you guys, I think it's like the average was about 3 days for shooting. I think mine was a total of about 12. It was 11 or 12 production days, if you even include the days of monster shots. And then, like, 2 days of, like, minor pickups where it's like, I think it was like the zombie puppet, the puppet, the chest burster puppet. But anyway, that's kind of the main gist of how High Score and how it went along, which is, wow, I've been going for far too long. Questions? Anyone?
I think you're a master of not fixing it in post, but creating new shit in post or something. Because the one day, I think I was just there for one day, and you were shooting the eggs and stuff in the garage. Yeah. and then to see the end results, like there's so many visual effects you do and so many just polishes and combining the elements and all that stuff. I was really blown away when I saw like the final finished thing.
The sad thing I have to say is that that everything that's in the film is reshoots. All the stuff you were there for that day, none of that's in the film. Yeah, there was some issues with like the makeup just wasn't where we wanted it to be. The effect, like the puppet wasn't done, the effects weren't done, and my dad like really wanted to spend like 2 weeks lighting the space. And so yeah, like we did a completely different setup when we came back in February. And even then on that day, we're trying to get this all done in one day and realizing, nope, we're going to have to do one more. So we came back for one more at the end of March. And the February day was fun. That was a blast. You know, Corey and Sarah got to meet Claire and Medea, who was amazing and did a great job. And they got along with her, you know, fantastically. And then the second day, like so many things went wrong and like blood shooter gags went wrong and just things were taking forever. And it's like, it's into 4 a.m. and Sarah's barefoot in the garage in March. And it's like, I'm starting to wonder like, oh God, is she starting to lose sensation in her feet? And it's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it was a weird, long, arduous ordeal.
I'll also say Daniel Timothy Tracy is a very distinct personality. And
that's a nice way of putting it.
Well, yeah, I think he's really funny, and you use him really well, like especially the scene where like they're having the shootout and it gets paused and he's on the phone for a second. I just thought that was great. Yeah, I mean,
I felt like he really got that script.
He did.
As an actor, he instantly saw where you were going with that character, which is great. He played it perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah, because I loved how he had to balance the best friend that means well but doesn't have any idea how to help his best friend who's high, you know, has got a problem, and then he also just completely over the top. The commando thing was great. The thing about the pause scene, that was come up with on the day. We were trying to figure out how to kill the guy, you know, and originally just going to be like eventually he runs out of ammo or something, or like he just some little bit of luck he gets the shot in, which, you know, is a very video game sort of vibe. But then there was a toy grenade, hand grenade, that the guy whose house we filmed at, he had found on the property left over on Halloween, and we were just chucking this around during lunch, and we started like. And so like Corey would throw it at Daniel and Daniel throw it back. And then it started to sort of percolate there. And the two of them improvised like that dialogue sort of on the spot. And then Dad and I figured, okay, this is pretty much just 1-2 shot coverage. And then I was the idea that was like, I said, Howard, do you have a Sega Nomad, don't you? And he says, yeah. It's like, pull that out. Let's have him pause it and I'll enter in a cheat code to get the hand grenade. And that was where that came from. I will say, we ruined the first 2 takes. Like I will say, Tracy nailed it perfectly on the first take. We fucked it up because we couldn't stop laughing. Like everyone in the room just dies laughing. So yeah,
that's my main problem shooting things. I can't hold it at all. I'm fucking the worst. I ruined so many things laughing.
Oh man. Yeah, and that was fun. It was really strange because I've never done comedy before, so it was like my first time actually like trying to do something in that vein. But yeah, is there any other
your segment when I saw all the stuff, it made me feel exceptionally lazy.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, I reused shot lists and locations and
we know, Calvin, we know
everything. And I was like, oh wow, people are putting work in on this, man.
Well, dude, I cut a ball in half for a gore gag.
Yeah, at least I went to the sex store.
On my movie.
Oh yeah, so Johnny, who did my sound, he was my boom operator, was in your short. Yeah,
that's Crochet.
Yeah. So great.
Yeah.
Cold as my wife's dinner, right? Isn't that the?
Oh yeah, colder than my wife's chicken dinner. Yeah.
I'm getting cold.
I haven't seen Spunks Not Dead in probably since the premiere, and I still can recall most of the lines from Zach's segment.
I haven't watched it for a while, but I did let it play on my TV in the background.
I did that for the
turned us like $1.50 at least on Amazon.
Nice.
Yeah, I did that too, actually.
I think it'll thrive on Amazon Prime for sure.
I'm hoping so. It's been, I don't want to get too into it, but like it's definitely interesting how like the democratization of streaming media has like helped folks like us who are trying to get our stuff out there, and also help us find the stuff we love. I mean, I'm finding films that I've been wanting to see for years since I was a kid, and like it's there
Amazon.
on Prime. Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, it's my favorite streaming service by far.
Oh, yeah.
I
mean,
finally got.
Mine too, but for the opposite reason, is I just find pure unfiltered garbage on it.
I do that too. Yeah, unsolved mysteries.
That's why I like it.
Well, I think the title "Spunks Not Dead" is going to get a lot of people to stop scrolling and be like, "Wait, what is that?" You know.
Well,
So.
I do that quite a bit, where I'll watch something. I'll watch some indie horror film, and then I just immediately go to customers also watched, and I'll just watch the next one. So I think it'll thrive in that aspect. I think there will be a lot of interesting people who watch other interesting films. You know, I can sort of see other movies in my head that it might be related to. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping you don't mean Creepshow 3.
Oh no! I was thinking like weird, like Frank Henenlotter, Frankenhooker kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know.
I could see
Maybe
that.
the New York Ripper or something, maybe.
The New York.
Yeah, there you go.
That movie's too good.
Yeah, but the last thing I was going to say regarding, or at least one of the last things to say about High Score was also, it was great also to see how I was able to get the same composer that Brian did, another Brian, a different Brian Minus composed Spunk of the Reaper and also did High Score. And I guess I'd like to actually ask Brian what your process was working with Brian Minus compared to, because I have my story about it, and I was kind of curious how you worked together and like how much collaboration you did with him.
He was wonderful because I had somebody else come on. I just decided I'm gonna like go for somebody who doesn't really do scores, who just does music, and the guy was terrible and he didn't turn anything in on time, and so I just moved on to somebody else, and then they didn't work out either, and finally I went to Brian, and Brian is such a professional, and he wants to do exactly what you want, whatever, you know, so he's willing to do however many tweaks it takes to tweaks.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can just give him an endless pile of notes, and he will continually just, you know, change a little chord here, add a little string or whatever. And yeah, it's great. I mean, he's wonderful, and I mean, his scores are really lush. I don't know. I mean, they sound really professional.
Yeah. I think the first time I heard him was for the score for Vicious for Jason Rosenblatt's feature, and I was very impressed with.
That's right.
That's the sound of that was very dynamic and interesting. And that was one reason I liked working with him. I remember he and I initially discussed like the idea of like things becoming very synthetic at the video game transition. And then also like the video game starts as 8-bit, very chiptune-y, and gets more and more realistic or more and more natural as like a kind of this arc. And what was kind of cool is like, so it starts as like Castlevania Mega Man. And then at the end of High Score, it kind of gets like Resident Evil, like Parasite Eve sort of sound, which I thought was always a lot of fun. And that was really cool just to see how because he's such a geek for this stuff. Like he nerds out about it. And like he said like, yeah, like I've actually gotten a emulator that emulates the way that 8-bit and NES sounds were done, or like Mega Drive, you know, chipsets were, you know, the soundboard worked. And it's like, my God, like it's able to make it that, you know, legit. And then, but yeah, then also like for the earlier stuff, we talked a lot about like Howard Shore's music for David Cronenberg films and like not making it just a typical drones or typical piano, like go with strings and go with a lot. Just he put so much heart into that. It was really impressive. And I know I think your budget, you know, you were feeling the tightness on your budget, Stephen, but I remember you were considering it also for Zombie as well
at the time, and then setback of the whole moving thing. He actually did help me on the 72-hour film fest one year that I did, and we were so short, he just sent us something, like he was like sending the video, and he just sent something back that was perfect and matched everything. So I was like,
yeah, it's good people.
He's great.
Yeah, there was one particular point that he wasn't getting exactly what I wanted, but he was determined to get it. He was like, what exactly do you want this to sound like? And so I started sending him these clips from Assault on Precinct 13. I was like, I want this to sound really synthy and like really dark and pretty simple. And then he started nailing it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny. Speaking about music, I always cut to music, just whatever I have on my computer and my iTunes. I just, kind of find something to get into the groove, to find a pace for it, just to start going. And I cut that short completely to Dave Brubeck, and I have a version that's all Dave Brubeck jazz music. And I wanted to use it so bad, and the cut is so much different. I ended up having to change it because I just ended up using stock music. I use some kind of classical like ballet music, and then the track at the track at the end, is the only known recording of an actual castrato. That's why I used it. Somebody had their nuts cut off as a little kid so that they can hit high notes, a male, and it's the only known recording in existence. So I got it. I tried to clean it up as much as I could because obviously it's in really bad shape and in the public domain. And really with music, after it became clear that I wasn't going to try and pay the Brubeck estate for this little short, I just wasn't going to do it. I just had to find stuff, I think at one point there was I really wanted to have the song Cheek to Cheek, heaven, I'm in heaven. I really wanted that in it as well, and just couldn't decide what I was going to do. I think the sequence where it keeps cutting back and forth between Daniel just smoking Spunk and Arissa getting ready for this date. I think I had Cheek to Cheek playing at one point, but
it definitely would have had a different effect than just yet another Apple Music loops thing. That was
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of found the jazziest stuff I had when editing that. I was like,
God, it's like one of those things that's like if I had. It's always the frustration. I try not to go too much into this with Spunks Not Dead, but there's always this feeling of we were so close, on so many of these things that we wanted to do, and it's like I have to just remember it's still good. Audiences, our friends still liked it. The audience that we played it for really got into it. I don't remember there being any walkouts that night because me and Jeremy were in the back, and so I didn't remember seeing anyone leave. So
I think it turned out.
Getting into, I think.
I think it turned out phenomenally. I think everybody did really, really well. I mean, everybody's short was, excelled in its own way. If you know what I mean. I mean, I was gonna say, Chris, even with your short, when I sat down on the floor and watched this with Natalie, when I had the rough cut and we were watching it, we both said, "Man, Chris's should have been a feature. It should have just been its own goddamn thing."
Yeah.
Everybody really turned out a really fantastic project, and that's why I said, after taking 3 days and then 3 more days to edit it, and as time went on, I started thinking, do I have time? Should I go back? Should we try and do something else? And then inevitably, the further and further along it went, I just thought, well, I'll just keep it there. We'll see what happens,
And it's amazing to think that with all of that, because I figured now that would be a good time to start to segue into talking about the whole wraparound concept and how we moved into figuring out how are we going to tie all this together, because that process took a long time. I'm just going back through our old secret Facebook group and realizing that our first discussion, so the first time Steven and I and my dad went to go meet with Jeremy on that subject was in June 24th of 2017. That's how long ago that was. That was our first sit down and try to get the wraparound figured out. And we had a pitch that day, and you and I think it developed this concept, right? I think because that was the police, that was our own take on the police detective idea. And he said this is a great idea, but you realize there's no way we can do this. There's no money. And it's oh shit, he's right, And then he had an idea that was simple, but then it was but it was almost too simple. And then we had a long process of figuring that out. And I wrote things, Steven wrote things. The one I still really loved yours, that Steven, that was the one with that kind of whacked out couple and they go to the house, and
mine was really fucking ambitious.
Yeah,
I utilized every character or at least one character from every
that's
single.
right. That was the one that I wanted to do. I remember
It
when
was, it was impossible.
But if I knew it was affordable, like, or at the very least was we had the means to do it, and especially do it safely, because there was going to be like stunt stuff and zombie makeup at the end.
So ambitious.
Yeah, but it's like a case of, if we could have done it, that would have been like perfect, because it was just at the right, the comedy was still there, the violence was still there, it was its own story, because it like had these two new characters that guided us through it, and I love that ending. I want to see you do that ending somewhere.
What was the ending?
She gets him zombified to help them escape.
Oh yeah, that was a good ending.
And it was sort of like, she's like, I love you, and everything is going wrong, but this is, and I hope you forgive me for this, but this is the only way we're getting out. And
I utilized everything.
I remember just really liking bringing characters from each segment. And I think at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I was going to be the character from Brian's. It
was either going to be you or Donnie,
Yep. We were going to have the...
Yeah.
Right. I think Calvin's from Spunk of the Reaper. Branch was supposed to play the grown-up version.
We were going to try to do John Branch as the guy on the picture of the cover art.
Right. Yeah.
That's the one thing our project was missing was John Branch.
Yeah.
It really was. Yeah. For those not in the Portland film community, John Branch is like one of the coolest guys, and we've all worked with him in some capacity, and it's he's a delight, and I think he's in Atlanta now. I think. Yeah. But if you want to see a good performance from him, I know he does really, at least what I've seen of it, he's done really well in The Unquenchable Thirst of Bone or Juice.
He's fantastic in that. He's actually the reason that I got him for the creepy molesty character in Jesus, I Was Evil. And a weird connection, we used the same severed dick prop for Jesus, I Was Evil. It was still there. It was still in great shape. It's actually pickled in my fridge. I keep it in my fridge. And every so often, Natalie pulls it out when she's like cleaning the fridge, and she goes, "Do we really have to keep this in here?" I was like, "Yes, it's got to stay in there. Keep it fresh." So there's a pickled dick in my fridge at all times, and it went from being Daniel Stewart's to being John Branch's. So
nice.
Yeah, we just repainted it, repurposed it.
Yeah,
works like a charm.
But yeah, eventually just, it was kind of a case of my father and I, who was trying to help me out with figuring out what we're going to do with the wraparound. We just kind of had to make a sort of executive decision. And I still feel kind of bad about sort of pushing everybody out of the way to figure out a way to get it done. But there was some personal stuff that had kind of come up where a friend of mine had reacted very poorly to Too High Score. And it would really put like this kind of damper on my friendship with her, which had already been kind of a little rocky through most of the year. And it was like, I got to get this. This has to be worth it. Like, so it was just a case of I just have to get this done by the end of the year so that there's something worth it. So I feel bad that, this collaborative thing ended up becoming very like, I became very like central into putting that force into it.
Well, I don't know if it would have got done without you doing that. So
somebody needed to take the helm. There needed to be like a captain of the ship, and I mean that's not saying anything about Jeremy or anyone else who worked on this, but there very clearly wasn't like somebody manning the helm of this ship. It was very much a bunch of navigators,
right?
Actually steering the boat. So somebody needed to go, this is the course that I've chosen, and this is the way it's going to go.
Right. And that's why I've said in the past that like sort of at the very least, I don't know if I've said this like publicly, but I've certainly said this privately, is that if ever to be involved in this type of project again, I would probably just step back and just be the producer to just sort of like guide, again, be the captain and sort of help everyone get what they needed, rather than being someone who's in the middle of it and unable to sort of help thread the pieces together. Because what was cool was that, I still wanted to instate that like everybody had final cut. Nothing was like, basically it was anything goes. The rules still applied of like you do any, as long as it fit the concept, anyone could do what they wanted with it, and try to keep that there. And just, but still like, it felt unfortunate that like, seeing like, and hearing how people like were a little frustrated with like I wish I'd had this or I had that, and realizing that I was not in that position to do that because I was also trying to maintain what I was doing. And so I feel like being able to step out and be that person on the the production side, I think, is really helpful because it's true. I mean, we basically we didn't even, I don't think I even read the script for Spunky Shines until way late after it had been shot, and I didn't even see Devil Spunk until I want to say September of 2017 was, I think, when I finally got the first peek at it. I think it's probably in here somewhere in this if I go dig through this group, but yeah. So what happened was that actually it was my father coming to me and saying, like, he had this sort of idea because he was just trying to help, it's just, and he had this concept of, what if you have like one of these Alex Jones style conspiracy theorist guys? Because at the time we'd been watching, videos of him, and he was in the news a bit more at the time. I mean, and that's the thing, Alex Jones today, like in 2019, it's gone completely, off the rails. And this is back when like the most was like him talking about the whole damn them to hell and, homosexual amphibians. And that was kind of the most of what we knew of him at the time. And so my dad and I basically wrote the wraparound of the Actual Factual Truth, and then, figured out like, okay, this is something we can get shot. It was a lot of pages, and like I had like 3 people to like turn it down because it was so like they loved the idea. They thought, like, they said, like, this is one of the funniest things I've read out of a local film, but I can't do this. Like, Dan Kyle was our original person to audition for it, and that I really wanted him to do. And he even like on the phone with me, he had the voice like perfect, like that same like rah rah rah, rage fest on him. And I don't know if this is talking too much out of school, but I mean, like, but it was a point of where, he was just sort of saying like, I want to do right by you, and I don't know what can be done, like I just feel like I have to back out because it's not, I don't want to let you down. And even Mick, when Mick LaFlamme came on and did it, he only had like, I want to say 2 weeks before we shot it to actually go through and prep everything. And he was pissed at himself for, like, oh, I'm making mistakes here, making mistakes there. And it's like, dude, you have 12 pages of fucking monologue to do, and you're giving yourself shit. Like, you're fine. You really are doing fine. You're doing great, all these things considered. We shot all that in a day. That whole wraparound was shot in a single day. Oh, wow. So, yeah. I mean, we got a little bit of pickups here and there, of like just like the table and like the monitor shot, and like that's it. But like everything else, it was 3 cameras running simultaneously for the whole thing.
What's cool is you got the whole Alex Jones Mick wraparound, but then you've also got these little segments where you've got like Brett hiding from the sniper attack or whatever. And,
yeah.
You got the guy with the whiteboard, and then you got the interview with me outside your house.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That was so fun, and you got to wear my Attack of the Flicks T-shirt at that. And yeah, and Tip was fantastic as the interviewer, just badgering you. That was so much fun to shoot. Yeah, that was cool. I'm actually glad you reminded me of that. I often forget about that. Like, yeah, like Austin Kaler, who's a regular on Chris Wilson's work. Like, he's been on The Drunk Show. He was the Survival Guy versus Zombie Apocalypse. Really highly recommend the Gangobot projects that Austin Kaler is in. He's amazing. But yeah, he's the guy on the phone. It was Michael Swanson is a buddy of Bob Olin's that he introduced me to for a Downcast short. So that whole whiteboard segment, I want to just briefly mention about that is that the whiteboard segment is actually kind of inspired by this real guy, is a guy named Richard Breaker. He's one of a few that do these like long diatribes on YouTube that talk about like the significance of like a certain date. They're like into like, well, maybe this is the time that Jesus is going to come back to our world. And so there's this one where he goes on the whiteboard, and over the course of like 2 hours, he combines biblical prophecy, astronomy, astrology, numerology, and what was it, like weather patterns, and like all this weird, like, and it's like threads this together to say like, and I'm not saying that that September 23 is the day, but you got to look at the signs here, and he scribbles all this crap down there. It was just like, I have to use this. This is incredible. Yeah, and Mick, I mean, did an amazing job. I loved in his wraparound what he added to it was that he said when he told me the story that there was a job he had where he had to drive long distances, and he would hear on the radio this guy who was doing these sort of talks of that's sort of conspiracy theory sort of stuff about the government and about UFOs and things like that, and it took him a while to realize that, my God, this guy is for real. Like this, you would think that this is just some public access guff. And it's like it's legit, and so the idea is he realized like how to make it so earnest. That's what I love about the performances. It's so earnest, and then we add all the drugs, which I know a lot of people comment that they love his performance, but I have gotten at least 3 or 4 positive comments about the cocaine.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is the funniest. That's the other laugh out loud moment. I had totally forgot about that until you brought it up. I remember laughing out loud and then laughing out loud again in the theater, saying it for the second time. It is the funniest because it's sped up, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it was sped up, but what we did was we had his hand the straw and we used like a dust vacuum. We actually ruined a dust vacuum getting all this cornstarch up there. But yeah, it comes from one of my favorite parts in Takashi Miike's Dead or Alive, the opening montage sequence. And there's that guy who does this like 70-foot long line of coke.
Right. It's just funny because if you know Mick at all, it's just he's so far removed from that character. And it's funny, I've seen a number of movies with Mick LaFlemme in it. I've seen him act quite a bit. I've worked with him quite a bit, and I think that might be his best role. I haven't seen everything he's done and like the stage work that I believe that he's done, but he's great as that Alex Jones character. I can't picture anybody else doing it. You say Dan Kyle, I just can't picture it. Mick it like just owns it.
Yeah.
Chris, did he see the finished project?
He was there for the premiere. Yeah. Okay, yeah, he was there. Yeah. And that's the sad thing is, he felt that was kind of the sign with that he was kind of ready. Like around that time he's thinking, I'm thinking it's time for me to call it a day and not do the act. And it's like, oh man, like I still get characters in my head that I'm like, Mick's perfect for that. I still get that. I
tried to get him on Jesus, I Was Evil. I really wanted him as like one of the priest characters.
Oh, he would have been great.
He's retired. Yeah. He retired after this movie?
Yeah, he said that he just didn't. He said he was having like trouble like with lines and stuff, and he called it a day.
Chris gave him a 12-page monologue.
I know. I mean, I was trying to tell him this. Like, it's like I told him like I wrote this and I can't even say it. Like, come on.
Actors are fragile, man. You ruined them.
Got a bubble, just get some bubble wrap. Jeez. But yeah,
he's fantastic.
Does anyone have any questions about the wraparound or the other stuff of like? I'm just trying to figure topic wise. I feel like I've talked a bunch, so I'm just kind of curious if anybody has any other stuff to bring to the table.
I mean, I was pretty close to you on that, so I kind of got the gist of a lot of the stuff that you were doing.
Yeah, I think it's the audience's turn to bring something to the table and go watch this fucking movie for free on Amazon.
Right. I agree.
And then leave a 4 to 5 star review.
Thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, please go forth and review.
I think it's got 10 reviews thus far, right? It's doing pretty good. I think some of those are us. I haven't done one though, so I mean, a couple of those I think are actual factual viewers.
Nice.
I'm starting to pick up a little bit.
The one thing I did get a question because I asked some of my friends about do you have any questions to ask the other directors, and my buddy Paul had the question of if any of us were considering having the setting or the style or the idea of Spunks Not Dead be used for another project in the future, and I was curious if anybody had any thoughts about that. Would you do it again?
Yes, there's a reference to it in Jesus, I Was Evil, which will be coming out in February via Wild Eye Releasing. But there's a very brief reference to it. We use the same thing, the same powder as this like street drug for a shot. In the script, it's referred to as spunk, and then I ended up cutting that. I was like, that's too on the nose, but I'm gonna reference some obscure movie that I made once upon a time. That's probably not a safe bet. So, but yeah, I think it's funny. I think there's a lot to be done with it. Like I said, I often, anytime I think about it too hard, I go, God, I wish I could go back in time and do something else because there's a lot there. You guys really did a good job with coming up with all these different wacky concepts for this made-up drug.
I've never considered really doing another Spunk, but I would love to do another anthology.
Yeah.
Like, I thought the anthology aspect of it was what was fun.
Man, I've got tons of shorts that I want to be a part of an anthology, another collaborative anthology.
Yeah, I would love to do an anthology or do anything grindhousey or really grungy like this. But I think as far as a Spunk movie goes, I've I've shot my last load, I don't know.
Nice.
Any more spunk?
Yeah, that was kind of the thing for me, was that like I took, part of the reason I took the gig was because I thought like at most my suspicion was like maybe 6.5 to 8 months, and ended up taking 2 years in my case. But
I thought 2 months. So
right. But because that was the thing, is like I thought like, I don't really want to make like a feature length grindhousey movie, just because I like to have a little more emotional engagement with my work, to the point that like it's got to spend like 2.5, 3 years. Like I'd like it to be something a little denser. That was why High Score became as kind of dense as it was. But yeah, I would still be interested in another anthology type piece. I mean, I have an idea of like, if to do this again, I know kind of what I would do, at least as a wraparound. Yeah, I especially have a wraparound idea and a title for that matter, actually, which is I would go for Spunk Has Risen from the Grave.
That's good. That's good.
And make it like the whole wraparound is like a punk venue, and like it's a punk show, and like the members of the band are tied to the story, so there's always like a song, and like the songs are like the segments, and at the end they basically like spike the drinks of everyone in the crowd, and like everyone starts to go nuts at the end.
Yeah, I sort of toyed around with the idea of kind of like a Blue Sunshine type idea with Spunk, just kind of almost doing a little bit of a love letter to Blue Sunshine, a little more grimy.
It's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because actually, behind me, I decided to go ahead and put up my the Squirm poster.
Yeah.
So speaking of Blue Sunshine.
I mean, I have the same characters that I would just put in something else, I suppose.
Yeah.
They fight demons or a cult now.
Yeah, I've never really felt compelled to ever do a sequel to anything. I guess the argument you could make here with Spunks Not Dead is it wouldn't be a sequel in the traditional sense. It would just be doing a completely different stories with the spunk theme to it, So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Now, so I guess, since we have us all together, I guess, and then moving on to what would be next, does anyone else have any projects in the pipeline? Obviously we've got Jesus I Was Evil coming out. Does anyone else have stuff that is coming out, that has been done? Anything we should be aware of in the future?
Yeah, tomorrow night, Oregon Scream Week, a little short that I wrote and starred in, and I don't know, it's a little vanity project called Kurt vs. Soup is playing. Actually, that's my love letter to Zach Carter. I sat down and was like, I want to do something like Boner Juice. I got that Blu-ray, and I love that movie. I think it's great. So, yeah, I sat down and script kind of in that vein, just stupid for the sake of stupid, I think is an amazing place to start when writing a script. It was very liberating. And then I'm working on a feature right now. We're going to be shooting this month up into February, and Arissa is in that. She's also producing, as well as John Hall, and got a really good cast and crew ready to go for that. So just gearing up for that, making shot lists and call sheets and all that fun stuff.
Cool. I'm just writing a bunch of stuff, and then Johnny and I are working on another Boner Juice type of picture, Brazilian fart porn explosion. So that'll be a thing.
Are you guys going to shoot in Portland?
Yeah, we will. Before the end of the winter, I'm going to come up and we're going to do a little proof of concept with our tin-dicked character.
Shoot me a call when you're in town. Come on by, man. We'll watch some movies.
But that's going to be a big one. So we're focusing all of my energies.
What about yourself, Brian? Are you going to be returning to the fold anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to maybe do a couple short films first half of next year. I'd love to shoot something on actual film, so I'm kind of looking into that. It just all depends on how expensive and cumbersome the whole process would be. But yeah, I love the look of film, so it'd be cool to try that. And then, yeah, I think I'm helping out a couple people with their projects. We'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I don't know. Just kind of taking it as it comes.
Oh my. Yeah, I'm just producing. I've been producing a few things that I'm waiting. I actually started this weird kick where I would write something, find a director, and then produce and like AD that project. So they're in post right now. We're just waiting on that getting done. And then I've been writing like crazy.
Yeah, you've got like
get features.
Like 3 features, right?
I have 3 features that are completely done and ready, and then I have 2 more that I need to still do a rewrite for, or 10 rewrites for. And then I got a pilot script as well that's finished, which some people have told me that's their best thing of mine that they've ever read. So kind of excited about continuing that storyline. But yeah, next year I really do want to delve into my first feature and see what all the fuss is about. So, and which is funny enough, it actually might be a drama and not actually a horror movie.
I still say that I was telling you the other day about that. Like, I think that's kind of a good way to kind of get yourself, like, at least to say, like, I can do more than just scare people and gross them out.
Totally. I've been bugging Tim Nenig actually recently. I've been telling him he needs to do just a straight up Christmas film. And him and do you guys know Michael Gibson? Have you guys worked with him?
Yeah, I just worked with him a couple months ago.
Yeah. The 3 of us, we kind of came up with this little idea, but I don't know. I don't think we have the time to do it. But I am constantly writing things outside the genre. I just have no desire to actually make them. I like writing them. I like writing bittersweet little romance tales, but I'm not ever going to make one. Forget that.
Yeah, I keep thinking I'm going to make my Ozu in Portland type movie, but yeah, I do have a premise in mind, but that's a discussion for another day. But the thing I will say about working with features, I think actually all of us, I think out of the 4 of us talking right now, or the 5 of us talking right now, you're the only one that hasn't directed a feature. Be prepared for the fact that you'll never be prepared with your first feature.
Oh yeah,
that's the main thing. And you think you understand that now, but 2 days into or a week into shooting, you're gonna realize no.
Yeah. A month before, 2 months before. I mean, I've got a little less than 2 months, and it's just like at least a panic attack a day. What am I supposed to be doing? That's what you do. Yeah. Like even right now, I go, what am I supposed to do after this? Did I get the call sheet sent out? I got the shot list. You just start running through everything constantly. Wake up in the middle of the night with a cold sweat.
Yeah. And I guess, and then for myself, for doing anything new, I'm hoping for this next year to do there was a script that one of my close friends, Lisa Fernandez, wrote this fantastic little short. Little is actually, it's kind of another micro feature in its own way. It's about 20 pages, but it's a modern take on the portrait of Dorian Gray. And I'm really excited to work on something like that because it definitely stylistically is going to be an amazing experiment because it's going to be very costume heavy. It's almost like a period piece. It's kind of almost some sci-fi sort of elements to it. It allows me to take influence from like The Hunger and, kind of Valley of the Dolls and like old Hollywood stuff. Like I've been really starting to get into like the works of like Dorothy Arzner. So like Craig's Wife is amazing, and that's definitely going to be an influence on it. So hopefully next year I'll be able to have something kind of different. But still dark and moody. It's still Dorian Gray. There's still some edge to it.
Cool. Oh, and by the way, your last project, Connor, is on that. He's in my my feature coming up.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, you're gonna have a blast with him. Connor is amazing. He's a sweetheart of a man, and there's a chill vibe. And what I also really like about him is that because of the fact I think there's definitely this great empathy working with him, because I noticed on my last short with the last short I just did that he was one of the leads in, is that he listens really well to the character, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So what you put in, you're going to get tons out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Any more thoughts on Spunks Not Dead?
Please watch it.
Yeah, seriously, guys, go check it out. It's free. It's very low risk, probably low reward, but hey,
I don't know. I mean, it's a good booze and buddies movie. You get your buddies together, get a little drunk. If you're in a legal state, get yourself some good weed and have a good time.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those movies. Yeah, for sure. Actually, I would say it's a must. You should be stoned while watching this, even if you live in a state where it's illegal.
Oh dear God! Calvin, no,
It's a misdemeanor, really. You're gonna get a fine. It's all right, man.
Great. Okay.
Grab some rubber cement from your local Fred Meyer. You're good to go, I think.
Just remember, folks, all of you out there, please spunk responsibly.